The blizzard outside Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport transformed Terminal D into a frozen purgatory. Cascades of cancellations scrolled endlessly across departure boards as stranded travelers claimed every available surface, their collective frustration hanging in the recycled air like an invisible fog. The weather system had stalled over North Texas with unexpected ferocity, dumping 18 inches of snow in a region ill-equipped to handle even a modest dusting. Meteorologists on terminal televisions used phrases like unprecedented and record-breaking, while harried airline staff managed the human consequences of nature's indifference to travel plans. Officer Elena Vasquez moved through this tableau of displaced humanity with practiced efficiency. At 34, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from a decade of law enforcement work. Her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun beneath her navy blue DFW airport police cap. The embroidered K9 unit patch on her sleeve occasionally caught the fluorescent lighting as she navigated between clusters of delayed passengers. At her side patted Stella, a 3-year-old German shepherd whose alert amber eyes continuously scanned the surroundings with an intensity that belied her calm demeanor. Unlike the explosive detection dogs or narcotics units that comprise most of the K9 division, Stella belonged to a specialized behavioral assessment team. She had been trained to detect subtle changes in human behavior that might indicate security threats, the micro-expressions, perspiration patterns, and unconscious gestures that revealed deception or malicious intent long before they manifested as action. Just a standard patrol, Vasquez had reassured her supervisor after volunteering for the extra shift. With all these stranded passengers, it makes sense to maintain visibility. What she hadn't mentioned was her reluctance to return to an empty apartment on this particular date. 3 years ago today, she had received the call that had changed everything. Her fiancé's patrol car crushed between a jackknife semi and the concrete median of I-35. The highway department had cleared the wreckage within hours, but the emptiness had never quite disappeared from the home they had shared. Work provided structure. Stella offered purpose. Together, they created a reason to continue moving forward when grief threatened to freeze her in place. Like the aircraft now immobilized on icy runways, the airport had transformed into an impromptu refugee camp. Travelers who had expected to spend only a few transitional hours in the terminal now unfolded their lives in miniature across the gate areas. Business travelers with expensive luggage participated in video conferences from uncomfortable seats, their professional voices contrasting with the casual backdrop. Families spread blankets on the floor, creating makeshift playpens for restless toddlers. College students sprawled across connected chairs, headphones creating islands of private space in the crowded terminal. Vasquez had already completed 2 full circuits of the international terminal since her shift began at noon. The unusual weather conditions had airport management concerned about more than just delayed flights. Thousands of stranded travelers created security challenges that went beyond the normal screening protocols. Frayed tempers, opportunistic theft, and the potential for more serious incidents all increased during extended disruptions. Stella and I will take the baggage claim in arrivals area again. She told Supervisor Collins over her radio. CBP reports they've still got a few international arrivals trickling in that made it before they closed the runways entirely. Copy that. Collins responded, "Let me know if you need backup. We've had 3 disputes at the customer service counters in the past hour. People are starting to lose it. €1. And I will do." They had nearly reached the international baggage claim area when Vasquez felt the first subtle change in Stella's demeanor. The shepherd's gait stiffened almost imperceptibly, ears shifting forward like satellite dishes homing in on a distant signal. Years of partnership had taught Vasquez to recognize the distinct gradations in her partner's alertness. This wasn't Stella's standard response to potential contraband or weapons. This was something different, something Vasquez had witnessed only once before. Stella's focus had locked onto a well-dressed woman in her 30s, standing apart from the crowds near a service corridor. Designer travel wear draped elegantly over her slender frame, despite the day's chaos. She gently rocked a sleeping infant in her arms, occasionally glancing toward the arrival boards with apparent anxiety. A subtle whine began in Stella's throat, the tension in her body building as they drew closer. Vasquez frowned, trying to make sense of her partner's behavior. A businessman struggling with oversized luggage would have seemed the obvious focus of a security dog's attention. Instead, Stella's unwavering concentration fixed on this unremarkable mother and child. "Easy, girl," Vasquez murmured, keeping her voice low as they continued their patrol. They passed within 15 feet of the woman, and Stella's alertness escalated to a low growl that vibrated through her body. Travelers nearby began shifting away nervously, creating an expanding circle of space around them. The airport security supervisor Collins approached with a concerned frown. "Officer Vasquez, is your dog all right? We're already dealing with enough tension today with all these cancellations." Vasquez was about to respond when Stella's behavior escalated dramatically. The growl transformed into a series of sharp, authoritative barks that echoed through the terminal. Phones came up immediately, passengers filming the disruption, as Vasquez felt her professional composure slipping. Stella, stand down," she ordered firmly, embarrassment flooding her face as the barking continued. But beneath the embarrassment came a creeping certainty. This wasn't a false alarm or an overwhelmed reaction to the crowd. This specific pattern of behavior, this intensity of focus on a woman and child, Vasquez had seen it exactly once before, during the case that had defined both their careers and forged their unusual partnership. Across the terminal, the well-dressed woman's expression morphed from confused to alarmed. She clutched the sleeping baby closer to her chest, her eyes darting toward the nearest exit as Stella's barking grew more insistent with each passing second. "I'm so sorry about this," Vasquez said, approaching the woman with her most reassuring smile while maintaining firm control of Stella's leash. The shepherd continued to strain forward, her barking replaced by intense focus and an occasional high-pitched whine that Vasquez recognized as Stella's signal for something profoundly wrong. "She's normally extremely well-behaved. I don't know what's gotten into her." The woman shifted the sleeping baby higher against her shoulder, her manicured hand protectively cradling the infant's head. "It's fine," she said, her voice carrying a slight tremor beneath its polished tone. "But I need to get to my gate. We've already been delayed for hours." Vasquez noticed that despite the woman's words, she was backing away, slowly creating more distance between herself and Stella. The baby remained motionless throughout the commotion, unnaturally still, despite the loud barking that had just subsided. "Which flight are you catching?" Vasquez asked, keeping her tone conversational while her trained eye caught subtle inconsistencies. The woman's designer luggage was scuffed in ways inconsistent with normal travel wear, and though she wore a wedding ring, there was no indentation on her finger suggesting long-term wear. "American Airlines to Chicago, then connecting to Denver," the woman replied quickly. "Too quickly. My husband is waiting for us." Stella had shifted into a behavior pattern that Vasquez had only observed during specialized training, a rhythmic movement between focusing on the woman's face and the baby, then back again. Not alerting to contraband or weapons, but to the relationship itself. "Your baby is sleeping soundly through all this," Vasquez observed, nodding toward the infant, who hadn't stirred, flinched, or reacted at all to the previous barking. "How old?" 8 months. The woman answered, then immediately corrected herself. "I mean almost 9 months now." Her free hand fluttered nervously to the designer scarf around her neck. "Please, my gate." "I understand." Vasquez nodded, making a show of checking her watch. "American to Chicago, you said that's interesting, because all American flights to Chicago were canceled 2 hours ago due to the storm. They made an announcement, Ishiditurai." The woman's composure fractured momentarily, her eyes widening before she regained control. "I meant United. It's been such a long day. I'm getting confused with all the changes. Would you mind if I just check your travel documents? With all the confusion today, we're helping passengers confirm their new flight information." Vasquez said, positioning herself subtly to block the nearest exit. "That won't be necessary," the woman said, her voice hardening as she took another step backward. "We're already late." The baby hasn't moved at all during this entire interaction, Vasquez observed quietly. Not even a fidget during Stella's barking. Most babies would at least stir for the briefest moment. Something cold flickered behind the woman's eyes. She's a good sleeper. Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification in the baby's travel documents. Vasquez said, no longer asking. It's standard procedure when traveling with infants. Vasquez guided the woman to a quieter area near a service quarter, away from the crowds of stranded passengers but still within view of security cameras. Stella remained in alert position, her focus unwavering, as the woman awkwardly maneuvered to retrieve identification while balancing the still motionless infant. My wallet should be right here, the woman muttered, digging through an expensive leather handbag that seemed too new to match her claimed travel history. I'm Catherine Winters, and this is my daughter Emma. Vasquez noted the slight hesitation before the baby's name, filing it away mentally, alongside other inconsistencies. When the woman finally produced a driver's license, Vasquez examined it carefully. Ohio license issued 14 months ago, yet no visible wear despite supposedly being carried daily. The photo matched, but something about the holographic security features didn't catch the light quite right. And do you have Emma's birth certificate or passport? All minors need identification for air travel, Vasquez said, maintaining her professional demeanor while radioing quietly for a second officer to join them. It's in my checked luggage, Catherine replied too quickly. The airline said it wasn't necessary to keep it with me since she's an infant. Officer Collins arrived, a veteran with 20 years of experience, who took in the situation with a quick glance at Vasquez's subtle hand signal. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us to the security office where we can sort this out more comfortably. Collins said with practiced authority, standard procedure when there are questions about documentation. The baby Emma, if that was really her name, still hadn't moved beyond shallow breathing. No startles, no shifts in position. None of the normal fidgeting, even sleeping infants typically display. Vasquez's concern deepened. Is there something wrong with the baby? She asked directly, watching Catherine's reaction closely. She's just a good sleeper, Catherine repeated, but her eyes darted away. She had a long night. As they walked toward the security office, Vasquez's mind flashed back to the case that had first revealed Stella's extraordinary abilities. The German Shepherd had been found in an apartment just over a year old, standing guard over the body of a 1-year-old girl. The mother lay nearby, both victims of what appeared to be a home invasion gone horribly wrong. What had shocked the responding officers wasn't just the dog's protective stance over the dead child, but her refusal to leave even days later. When animal control had finally managed to remove her, they discovered she'd sustained wounds trying to defend the family evidence she'd fought the attackers despite being severely outmatched. Most dogs would have been considered too traumatized for service work after such an experience. But something about Stella's behavior during evaluation had caught the attention of the K9 training division. Her hypervigilance around children, initially considered a potential liability, was eventually recognized as an extraordinary sensitivity that could be channeled into specialized training. I'd like to request a medical check for the baby, Vasquez said to Collins, keeping her voice low. She hasn't moved or responded normally this entire time. Catherine's composure cracked visibly. That's ridiculous. You can't just demand to medically examine my child based on your dog's behavior. This is harassment. Stella's reaction to the woman's raised voice was telling. Rather than becoming more alert to the perceived threat, as most service dogs would, she positioned herself closer to the baby, as if trying to shield the infant from the woman claiming to be her mother. Mrs. Winters, we have reason for concern, Vasquez said firmly. The baby's lack of response to external stimuli is unusual. We're requesting a welfare check, which is within our authority. When we have reasonable suspicion a minor may be in distress. The arrival of the airport medical team temporarily interrupted the questioning as a paramedic gently examined the still unresponsive infant. Vasquez stepped aside with Collins to brief him more fully on her suspicions. Stella remained positioned near the baby, her behavior now a textbook display of protective vigilance rather than alert signaling. The paramedic's voice pulled Vasquez back to the present. This child has been sedated, she reported with professional urgency. Respirations are depressed, pupils sluggish. We need to get her to emergency care immediately. Catherine Winters, if that was her real name, lunged suddenly for the door, but Stella was faster, positioning herself firmly in the woman's path without aggression, but with unmistakable purpose. Ms. Winters, you're being detained pending investigation, Vasquez stated formally as Collins moved to secure the increasingly agitated woman. The infant is being taken for emergency medical evaluation, and we're going to have a lot of questions for you. Detective Ryan Marshall from Dallas PD's Special Victims Unit arrived within the hour, his weathered face grave as he reviewed the preliminary reports. Despite the blizzard conditions that had paralyzed much of the city, he had made the treacherous drive to the airport, understanding the urgency when a sedated infant was involved. Marshall was 48, with salt and pepper hair cropped close to his scalp, and eyes that had witnessed the darkest corners of human behavior. Without surrendering to cynicism, he and Vasquez had worked together briefly during the Mercer homicides 3 years earlier, the case that had brought Stella into her life, and he had been one of the few detectives who had supported her unconventional adoption of the traumatized shepherd. The woman's real name is Vanessa Mitchell, he explained, showing Vasquez a file on his tablet, released 3 weeks ago from Lakewood Psychiatric Hospital after a 6-month involuntary commitment. The photo matched their detainee, though in the file, Vanessa appeared disheveled and vacant-eyed, a stark contrast to the polished facade she'd presented at the airport. Wait, what was she in for? Vasquez asked, watching as Stella maintained her vigilant position near the baby's hospital bed. Despite the commotion of the emergency room, the shepherd remained focused, her training, allowing her to stay calm amidst the medical equipment and personnel. Severe postpartum psychosis following the death of her infant son from SIDS 6 months ago, Marshall replied. She was found trying to take a baby from a grocery store parking lot, claiming it was her child. The doctors thought she was responding well to treatment, but clearly, he gestured toward the emergency room and the baby. Do we know who she is? Vasquez asked, nodding toward the infant now receiving fluids and monitoring. Marshall nodded. Her name is Olivia Mitchell, 8 months old, reported missing from her home in Austin yesterday. The mother is Vanessa's sister, Sarah Mitchell. She's flying in now, should be here within the hour. To me, Vasquez processed this information, the pieces fitting together with grim logic. So Vanessa took her sister's baby, sedated her to keep her quiet during travel, and was attempting to flee the state. That's our working theory. Marshall confirmed. Though there are still unanswered questions, Vanessa doesn't drive and had no access to funds. Someone helped her get to Austin, take the baby, and make it to DFW with fake documents. Stella's ears suddenly perked up her attention, shifting toward the treatment room entrance. Vasquez had learned to trust these subtle alerts. Her partner had detected something significant. What is it, girl? She murmured, following Stella's gaze to where a man in a crisp suit was speaking with the charge nurse, his hospital ID badge prominently displayed. That's Dr. Thomas Bennett, Marshall explained, noticing Stella's reaction. Vanessa's psychiatrist from Lakewood. He called it in when he heard she'd been detained, says he's concerned about her mental state during questioning. Stella's posture had changed dramatically, the relaxed vigilance replaced by rigid alertness. The same behavior she displayed toward Vanessa earlier. Vasquez had worked with Stella long enough to recognize the pattern. Her partner had identified another threat. In the secure interview room, Vanessa Mitchell looked nothing like the confident woman from the airport. Her designer clothes were rumpled makeup, smeared from crying, all pretense stripped away by the reality of her situation. I just wanted him back, she whispered when Vasquez entered, not looking up. They told me he was gone, but mothers know, we always know. You're talking about your son, Vasquez said gently, taking the seat across from her. The one who died. Vanessa's gaze snapped up, suddenly fierce. He didn't die. That's what they want everyone to believe. Thomas showed me the truth, how they take babies from mothers they deem unfit and place them with more suitable families. My sister's baby, she looks just like my Charlie. It can't be coincidence. Thomas, Vasquez prompted. You mean Dr. Bennett? He understands. Vanessa continued, her words tumbling out faster. He's seen it happen to other mothers too, the system declaring them unstable, taking their children, faking deaths. He helped me see that Olivia's really Charlie. They just gave him to my sister when they took him from me. Vasquez maintained a compassionate expression while mentally connecting the disturbing dots. And Dr. Bennett helped you get to Austin, helped you take Olivia. Vanessa nodded, a childlike trust in her eyes. He said once we were far away, he could prove it was Charlie with DNA tests that we'd be a family again. Did he give you the medication for Olivia to keep her quiet during travel? Just baby Benadryl, she said defensively. He's a doctor. He gave me the right dose, said it would make the transition easier for Charlie for Olivia until she remembered me. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Vasquez excused herself, finding Marshall in the hallway and briefing him quickly on Vanessa's statements. A commotion from the direction of the pediatric unit interrupted them. Raised voices, the sound of equipment crashing to the floor. They rushed back to find hospital security attempting to restrain Dr. Bennett, who had somehow gained access to Olivia's treatment room despite protocols. Stella stood between the doctor and the infant's bed, her posture defensive but controlled exactly as she'd been trained. "This is outrageous," Bennett shouted, his professional demeanor cracking. "I'm this child's doctor. I have every right to examine her." As security escorted Bennett from the room, Vasquez noticed him slip something into his pocket, a small vial that glinted under the hospital lights. Stella's focused attention on that same pocket confirmed her suspicion. "Detective, I believe Dr. Bennett just attempted to take a DNA sample from Olivia," Vasquez said quietly to Marshall. "If he's been manipulating Vanessa's delusions..." The surveillance footage from Vanessa's room at Lakewood, obtained via emergency warrant, played on the large screen in Dallas PD's Special Victims Unit. The timestamp showed 2:14 a.m., 3 nights before Olivia's abduction. In the grainy video, Dr. Bennett sat beside Vanessa's bed, speaking in low tones as he showed her something on a tablet. "He's programming her," the FBI consultant explained, pausing the footage, "using her delusions about her son to manipulate her into believing her niece is actually her child. Classic exploitation of a vulnerable subject." The consultant, Dr. Alicia Reyes, specialized in psychological manipulation and coercive control. She had been brought in from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit to help understand the relationship between Bennett and his patients. What we're seeing here isn't merely a doctor failing to maintain proper boundaries. Dr. Reyes continued her precise movements, with the video controls reflecting her methodical approach to analysis. This is systematic psychological manipulation, carefully targeted reinforcement of delusions that serve as purpose, rather than therapeutic interventions to help her process grief. Sarah Mitchell, who had been quietly providing background information while hospital staff cared for Olivia nearby, spoke up. "Vanessa told me once that Thomas said he understood her pain because he'd lost a child too, a son taken by the system in an unjust custody battle." Vasquez felt the pieces clicking together, matching the patterns Stella had somehow detected from the beginning. He's recreating his own trauma through these women, she realized, using them to recover what he believes was taken from him. Classic projection and substitution. Dr. Reyes agreed. He's recruiting vulnerable mothers to enact the revenge he can't accomplish himself. The question is, how many times has he done this before? And was Vanessa supposed to be the final rehearsal or just another practice run? Marshall's phone buzzed with an incoming message. "Warrant for Bennett's residence and office. Just came through. Evidence team is standing by. We need to search for records of other patients with similar profiles." Vasquez said, "Women who lost children, particularly through state intervention or under questionable circumstances, and we need to find Bennett's son." Dr. Reyes added, "If he lost custody 5 years ago, as the preliminary background check suggests, where is that child now? Is this entire pattern motivated by his efforts to reclaim his own son, or has something more disturbing happened?" The storage facility on the outskirts of Dallas stood stark against the fading daylight, rows of identical orange doors lining concrete corridors. Unit 31 rented under a shell. Company traced back to Bennett was secured with both a digital lock and heavy padlock. The search warrant had been expedited based on the mounting evidence. but Stella's behavior suggested whatever lay beyond that door was worse than they'd anticipated. When the lock finally yielded with a metallic click, Stella stepped back, positioning herself beside Vasquez, as if seeking reassurance before facing whatever lay within. The storage unit contained no people, no immediate threats, but what it revealed was perhaps more disturbing for its methodical organization. One wall was covered with photographs, news clippings, and medical records, all relating to infants and young children. Another held medical equipment, including sedatives identical to those used on Olivia. But most disturbing was the center of the room where a nursery had been meticulously assembled. Crib-changing, table rocking chair, all arranged as if waiting for a child. This isn't just preparation. Marshall observed, his voice tight with controlled anger. This is rehearsal space. He's been training these women, preparing them for something more than just taking random children. Stella moved carefully through the space, her training allowing her to navigate without disturbing evidence. She stopped at a filing cabinet in the corner, alerting with the specific pattern she used for documents of interest. Inside, they found what appeared to be Bennett's private case files, detailed psychological profiles of dozens of women who had lost children, all patients at various institutions where he'd worked over the years. Each file contained annotations about susceptibility to reconditioning and potential for maternal reclamation project. He's been doing this for years, Vasquez said, flipping through the meticulously organized papers, identifying vulnerable women, assessing their manipulability, selecting candidates for what he calls reconditioning. But reconditioning for what? Marshall asked, examining another file. These women aren't just random victims of his manipulation. He's selecting them for specific characteristics. It's a selection process, Dr. Reyes said, examining the psychological assessments. He's looking for women who match particular criteria, not just vulnerability to suggestion, but physical appearance, educational background, socioeconomic status. These aren't random targets. Stella suddenly gave a sharp alert bark, the specific signal she'd been trained to use when finding concealed evidence. She stood rigid, focused on what appeared to be an ordinary section of drywall. The forensics team moved in with their equipment, quickly confirming a hidden compartment behind the false wall. They discovered what transformed the case from exploitation to something far darker. USB drives containing videos of Bennett interviewing his patients, gradually reshaping their perceptions through careful manipulation. More disturbing were the files documenting failed reclamations, cases where his subjects had been caught or had failed to retrieve the targeted children. They found detailed plans for manipulating a current patient named Elise Warner into believing her recently deceased infant was actually alive and being raised by a cousin in Seattle. The timing in his notes showed this was scheduled for next week if Stella hadn't alerted to Vanessa at the airport. Behind another hidden panel, they discovered something that chilled even the experienced investigators, a systematic plan for what Bennett called the final reclamation. Detailed maps, identity documents, international travel arrangements, and a comprehensive psychological conditioning schedule, all centered around a 5-year-old boy named Noah Bennett, the doctor's biological son. These aren't practice runs. Vasquez realized the horror of Bennett's plan becoming clear. They're rehearsals. He's been using these women as test subjects, learning from their failures, refining his techniques for his ultimate goal, taking back his own son. Where is the child now? Marshall asked, examining the maps with growing concern. Dr. Reyes pointed to notations on one of the documents. According to this, the boy lives with his mother, Rebecca Bennett, in Boston. Bennett has been planning to use what he's learned from manipulating these other women to reclaim his son and disappear with him internationally. In the interview room, Bennett sat with the practiced calm of someone accustomed to being the authority figure. His attorney, a sharp-suited woman from an expensive firm, had advised him to say nothing, but his ego proved stronger than her counsel. This is all a tremendous misunderstanding. He began, his voice carrying the same soothing tones he likely used with patients. Vanessa Mitchell is a deeply disturbed individual whose delusions have unfortunately been treated as fact. Stella, lying quietly beside Vasquez's chair, lifted her head at this statement, her ears forward with intense focus. "We found your storage unit, Dr. Bennett," Marshall replied evenly, "and your files, rather detailed records for someone claiming misunderstanding, research materials." Bennett countered smoothly, "I'm writing a book on maternal grief and delusional reclamation." These women's stories are powerful examples of how the mind creates alternative realities to cope with loss. Stella stood suddenly moving to position herself directly across from Bennett, her amber eyes fixed on him with unsettling intensity. It wasn't an aggressive move, but something more disconcerting: recognition. "Your dog seems poorly socialized," Bennett commented, a flicker of genuine unease crossing his face. "Military canines need proper transition training for civilian work." "Stella isn't military," Vasquez corrected. "She's a survivor found at a crime scene where a mother and baby were murdered. The interesting thing is how she somehow developed the ability to detect when children are in danger, particularly from adults pretending to be something they're not." Bennett's expression remained neutral, but Vasquez noted the subtle tightening around his eyes, the first crack in his professional facade. "What happened to your son, Dr. Bennett?" Vasquez asked quietly, following Stella's lead. "The court records show you lost custody 5 years ago, but there's no record of him after that." The change was immediate and dramatic. Bennett's composed facade cracked, revealing a flash of raw fury before he regained control. His attorney placed a warning hand on his arm, but he shook it off. "My son is none of your concern," he said, voice suddenly cold. "This fishing expedition is based on the behavior of a dog and the ramblings of a psychotic woman. I counsel troubled mothers. That's my job." "I don't think so," Vasquez replied calmly. "Because while we've been having this conversation, search teams have been executing warrants at your residence and office. I'm particularly interested in what they might find in the locked room in your basement, the one with the reinforced door." It was a calculated guess based on Stella's reaction, but Bennett's expression confirmed she'd hit the mark. The facade collapsed entirely, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "These women, I'm helping them reclaim what was taken. The system destroys families, declares mothers unfit, tears children from their natural bonds. My work restores the natural order." "Where is your son, Dr. Bennett?" she asked quietly. The smile that spread across his face contained no warmth. "Safe beyond the reach of a system that separates families based on arbitrary standards of fitness." Each of these women, their rehearsals, preparations, learning from their failures to ensure my success. As if on cue, Vasquez's phone buzzed with a message from the team at Bennett's residence. "Hidden room located in basement, evidence of recent childcare. No child present, but signs suggest occupied within past 48 hours. The search for Dr. Bennett's son expanded across 3 states over the next 72 hours. National alerts were issued, border security heightened, and every property connected to Bennett scrutinized. The discovery that he maintained multiple identities and properties under various shell corporations complicated the search. But Stella's unique abilities would prove invaluable in the coming days. "We need to think like Bennett," Marshall said during a strategy session at Dallas PD headquarters. The whiteboard behind him was covered with photographs and maps, a visual representation of their expanding investigation. He's been planning this for years, meticulously documenting every step. He wouldn't leave his son somewhere random. His clinical notes suggest he sees himself as restoring natural order. Dr. Reyes observed, "The properties we've identified so far are all in urban areas, but his writings repeatedly reference returning to natural states and escaping corrupting influences." Vasquez studied the maps, searching for patterns. "What about recreational properties, somewhere isolated but comfortable? Somewhere he could present as a normal father-son getaway?" In the real breakthrough came when they located Bennett's former college roommate, now a successful real estate developer. Although initially reluctant to speak with investigators, he eventually revealed that Bennett had often talked about a family cabin in the East Texas piney woods, a property that had belonged to his grandparents. He always said that was where he felt most authentic. The roommate recalled, said when his son was born, he'd take him there to teach him the things that really mattered away from the societal corruption. The property records showed no cabin registered to Thomas Bennett, but a search of properties registered to his maternal grandfather revealed a 3-acre lot near Lake Sam Rayburn, purchased 40 years earlier and never transferred after the grandfather's death. The location matched references in Bennett's private journals about the sanctuary and the inheritance. Stella worked tirelessly alongside specialized search teams, her unique abilities proving invaluable as they narrowed their focus to the remote cabin. When aerial surveillance confirmed the presence of a vehicle and signs of occupation, a tactical approach was planned for dawn. The operation unfolded with practiced precision. Within 20 minutes, tactical teams had secured the cabin and its occupant, a young woman who identified herself as Andrea Wesley, a nursing student hired through a private agency to care for a Dr. Mitchell's son while he was traveling for work. The boy, found sleeping peacefully in a carefully decorated bedroom, appeared healthy and well cared for. Now awake, he watched the officers with solemn eyes that seemed too old for his 5 years. "Hello," Vasquez said, gently kneeling to his eye level, while Stella sat patiently beside her. "My name is Elena. This is Stella." The child's focus immediately shifted to the dog, something softening in his guarded expression. "She's pretty," he said quietly. "Is she nice?" "Very nice," Vasquez assured him. "Would you like to pet her? She's especially trained to help children feel safe." Stella moved forward with gentle precision, lowering her head to make herself less intimidating. The boy reached out hesitantly, then with more confidence, when Stella responded with a soft whine of encouragement. "What's your name?" Vasquez asked as the child stroked Stella's fur. "Noah," he replied, "but sometimes Dad calls me Matthew for safety." The slight hesitation before he added the last part spoke volumes about the psychological conditioning he had endured. Vasquez kept her expression warm and engaged, though inwardly she felt a surge of anger toward Bennett for manipulating this child's reality. "Noah is a wonderful name," she said. "Can you tell me about living here with Andrea? Is it—" He nodded, his hand still buried in Stella's fur. "Andrea stays with me when Dad has to work. She helps me with schoolwork and makes good pancakes." "Is my dad in trouble?" the boy asked cautiously after several minutes of gentle conversation. Vasquez considered her response carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups don't tell the truth," she said gently. "But we're going to find out exactly what happened and make sure you're with people who will take very good care of you." The subsequent investigation revealed the devastating truth: Noah's mother hadn't abandoned him at all. Rebecca Bennett had been fighting desperately to regain custody of her son for over 3 years, hampered by falsified psychological evaluations and manipulated court records, all orchestrated by her ex-husband, who had used his professional credentials to systematically discredit her. Rebecca Bennett arrived at Dallas Police Headquarters 24 hours later, her face bearing the exhaustion of a marathon flight from Boston, followed by a sleepless night of interviews and preparation. At 37, she carried herself with the careful composure of someone who had learned to navigate hostile systems without revealing vulnerability. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her clothes simple but professional. Her only jewelry, a small compass pendant that she touched frequently as if confirming her direction. It started after Noah turned 2. She explained to Vasquez and Marshall during the pre-reunion briefing. Thomas became increasingly controlling, paranoid about outside influences. He began documenting every parenting decision I made that he disagreed with, keeping detailed records of what he called maternal failures. When I finally filed for divorce after he became physically threatening, he used his professional connections to paint me as unstable and delusional. The court documents substantiated her account. Bennett had leveraged his position as a respected psychiatrist to enlist colleagues who provided expert testimony about Rebecca's supposed instability, all without ever having conducted proper evaluations. Judges impressed by his credentials and those of his allies had granted him temporary custody during the proceedings. Then Thomas and Noah simply disappeared. Rebecca continued her composure, cracking slightly. Missing persons reports were filed, but somehow they were never prioritized. Every time I pushed, I'd find myself subject to new allegations that I was paranoid, obsessive, potentially dangerous to my son. How did Bennett manage to continue practicing while effectively in hiding with Noah? Marshall asked, reviewing the timeline of events. He created an elaborately compartmentalized life. Rebecca explained he maintained his professional identity in Dallas while establishing a separate existence as Matthew Mitchell. With Noah in East Texas, he told colleagues he traveled frequently for child custody consultations, which explained his irregular schedule. Meanwhile, he told his son that they needed multiple identities to stay safe from me. And the women he manipulated, Vasquez prompted, "When did that begin?" I believe it started with his patient, Elaine Cordova, about 2 years ago. Rebecca said she'd lost custody of her daughter after a psychotic episode. Thomas began treating her, but instead of helping her accept reality, he convinced her that her daughter was being hidden from her. She attempted to take a child from a playground in Houston, a little girl who resembled her daughter. When she was arrested, Thomas publicly presented it as a tragic case of mental illness he'd been treating. Privately, I believe he was testing his methods. The pattern repeated with increasing sophistication: vulnerable women who had lost children, subtle manipulation, reinforcing their delusions, redirecting their grief and rage toward specific targets. Bennett had been refining his approach, learning from each failure, documenting the results in his clinical files, disguised as legitimate therapeutic notes. What was his endgame? Marshall asked. Why go through such elaborate preparations? Rebecca touched her compass pendant again, gathering her thoughts. Thomas always believed that the legal system had betrayed him, betrayed all fathers, in his view. I think he was developing a network of women who could help him establish a completely new identity, offshore women who would be grateful enough to him for restoring their children that they would assist in maintaining his cover. Vanessa was meant to be the final test run before he took Noah and disappeared permanently. The reunion, when it finally happened under careful supervision at the Children's Advocacy Center, broke and mended Vasquez's heart simultaneously. Rebecca fell to her knees when she saw Noah, tears streaming down her face as she held out trembling arms. The boy hesitated, years of his father's conditioning evident in his uncertainty. Stella, still by Noah's side, gently nudged him forward, a subtle encouragement that seemed to give him the confidence he needed. He took one step, then another, before finally running into his mother's embrace. "My baby," Rebecca sobbed, holding him as if she might never let go. "My beautiful boy." The child's initial stiffness gradually melted as some deeply buried recognition surfaced. His small arms wrapped around his mother's neck as he buried his face against her shoulder. When he finally pulled back to look at her, his expression held a mixture of confusion and dawning recognition. "I know your voice," he said with the simple directness of childhood. "From my dreams." Rebecca's smile through her tears illuminated the room. "I used to sing to you every night. Do you remember the song about the little sailboat?" Noah's eyes widened. "The blue one that sails to the stars." She nodded, her voice breaking as she began to softly sing the lullaby she'd composed for her son as an infant. Noah's expression transformed, years of carefully constructed falsehoods crumbling in the face of this primal memory. As they watched Rebecca and Noah begin the delicate process of rebuilding their relationship, Vasquez reflected on the chain of events that had led to this moment. What had started with Stella's unexpected barking at an airport had uncovered a scheme of manipulation and exploitation spanning years, all because a traumatized dog had developed an extraordinary ability to sense when parent-child relationships weren't what they appeared to be. "Your partner is something special," Marshall observed, nodding toward Stella, who had settled into a watchful position near Noah and his mother. "Most canines are trained to find specific threats, drugs, explosives, suspects, but Stella finds the truth. That's what trauma did for her." Vasquez replied thoughtfully. "When she couldn't save that little girl 3 years ago, something fundamental changed in how she perceives the world. She's constantly looking for children in danger, constantly assessing the authenticity of the adults around them. A blessing from a tragedy, Marshall mused. 3 years earlier, before Stella had entered Vasquez's life, the call had come in at 3:17 a.m. A neighbor in a downtown apartment complex reported hearing what sounded like a struggle, followed by prolonged silence from a unit typically filled with the sounds of a young family. Officer Elena Vasquez, then working patrol in Dallas's Central Division, had been the first to arrive. The night air had carried the slight chill of early autumn as she approached the third-floor apartment service weapon, drawn every sense heightened by the dispatcher's note that the caller had mentioned a young child might be present. The apartment door stood slightly ajar. Never a good sign. Vasquez announced her presence received no response and entered with tactical caution. The scene inside had already fixed itself in her memory with the cruel permanence of trauma. A young woman later identified as Isabel Mercer lay crumpled near the living room couch, the fatal wound to her chest leaving little doubt about her condition. A trail of disruption, overturned furniture, scattered toys. A bloodied kitchen knife told the story of a desperate struggle. But it was what Vasquez found in the nursery that would change the trajectory of her career and her life. A German shepherd, barely more than a puppy herself, stood guard over the tiny body of a toddler. The dog's fur was matted with blood from multiple knife wounds, evidence of her desperate attempt to defend her tiny charge. Despite her injuries, the shepherd maintained her protective stance, a low growl rumbling in her chest as Vasquez entered. "It's okay," Vasquez had whispered, holstering her weapon and kneeling slowly. "I'm here to help." Those amber eyes had studied her with an intelligence that transcended animal instinct, seeming to evaluate her intentions with human-like discernment. After a long moment, the dog had whined softly and stepped back, allowing Vasquez to approach the child. It was immediately clear that no help would save the little girl, her lifeless form bearing testament to the violence that had swept through the apartment. The medical examiner would later determine that the shepherd, who had apparently belonged to the family, had fought desperately against the assailants, sustaining multiple defensive wounds in her attempt to protect the child. Despite her efforts, the infant had been killed, and the dog had positioned herself in death as she had in life as guardian. When animal control arrived to remove the injured shepherd, she refused to leave the child's side. It took 3 officers and a sedative to finally separate her from her vigil. Vasquez, watching this scene with tears streaming unnoticed down her face, had made an impulsive decision. "Don't take her to the shelter," she'd instructed. "I'll take responsibility for her medical care. She's a witness, potentially evidence." It was a flimsy justification, professionally speaking, but her supervisor had been moved enough by the situation to approve the arrangement. The shepherd's wounds had required extensive veterinary care, during which Vasquez had visited daily, gradually establishing a tentative connection with the traumatized animal. The investigation into the Mercer homicides had revealed the culprit to be Isabel's estranged partner, who had violated a protective order to enter the apartment. He had been arrested the following day, still bearing scratch and bite marks from his encounter with the protective shepherd. When the dog, whom Vasquez had begun calling Stella after the star-shaped marking on her chest, was finally released from veterinary care, a more permanent decision loomed. Standard procedure would have sent her to a shelter where her history of trauma might have made adoption difficult. Instead, Vasquez had approached the K-9 training division with an unusual proposal. This dog has seen the worst humanity has to offer, yet she still tried to protect her family. She'd explained to the skeptical trainers, "That kind of loyalty and courage can't be trained. It's innate." Initial evaluations had revealed Stella's heightened alertness around children, her intense focus on adult-child interactions that most dogs would ignore. What the training staff had initially considered problematic hypervigilance, Vasquez recognized as something extraordinary, an ability to assess the authenticity of relationships, to detect subtle signs of deception or threat that even trained human observers might miss. "She's not detecting substances," Vasquez had argued during a critical evaluation meeting. "She's detecting intent, relationships, authenticity." Against considerable skepticism, a specialized training program had been developed focusing Stella's unusual sensitivity into a disciplined assessment protocol. Meanwhile, Vasquez had transferred from patrol to the airport police division, drawn by the opportunity to work with the K-9 unit and the unique security challenges of a major international hub. 16 months later, when Stella completed her specialized training, the partnership that had begun in tragedy was officially formalized. They had been working together ever since their shared experience of loss, creating a bond that transcended typical handler K-9 relationships. The Bennett case sent ripples through multiple systems of law enforcement, psychiatric care, family courts. The exposure of his manipulation techniques had prompted reviews of similar cases nationwide, revealing a disturbing pattern of mental health professionals using their authority to discredit parents in custody disputes. For Noah and Rebecca Bennett, the path forward was challenging, but hopeful trauma specialists worked with the boy to help him understand the deception he had experienced without demonizing his father, whom he still loved despite everything. Children's capacity for healing is remarkable. Dr. Julia Soto. Noah's therapist explained during a follow-up briefing 6 weeks after the reunion, Noah is gradually integrating his experiences, distinguishing between the love his father genuinely felt for him and the harmful actions that love motivated. Rebecca had relocated temporarily to Dallas to facilitate the ongoing investigation in Noah's therapy. She had secured a position teaching mathematics at a local college, her academic credentials finally valuable again after years of being used against her in custody hearings. The hardest part, as she confided to Vasquez during a supervised visit with Noah and Stella at a local park, is helping him understand that it's possible to love someone who has hurt you, that emotions don't have to be all or nothing, that his father did terrible things, but wasn't a terrible person in every way. Noah had developed a special bond with Stella, who seemed equally drawn to the solemn child. When Rebecca brought him for their weekly visits, he would spend the first few minutes simply sitting with the shepherd, his small hand resting on her back, sometimes whispering things in her ear that he wouldn't share with the adults. She understands, he'd explain seriously when Vasquez asked about these private conversations. She remembers what it's like when someone hurts people you love. Vanessa Mitchell's case had taken a different trajectory. With proper treatment and the removal of Bennett's manipulative influence, she had begun the painful process of genuinely grieving her son's death. Sarah had chosen compassion over prosecution, supporting her sister's mental health treatment. Rather than pressing charges for Olivia's abduction, she was as much a victim as Olivia, Sarah had explained. Thomas exploited her deepest pain to serve his own purposes. She needs healing, not punishment. As for Thomas Bennett, his case had become a focal point for reform in psychiatric oversight and family court procedures. The discovery that he had manipulated not just vulnerable patients, but also court-appointed evaluators and judges through his professional network had exposed critical weaknesses in systems designed to protect children. The most dangerous predators are those who understand the system well enough to weaponize it. District Attorney Ramirez had stated at the press conference announcing Bennett's indictment on multiple federal and state charges. Dr. Bennett used his professional authority to create a perfect camouflage for his actions. This case will change how we evaluate expert testimony in family court. Later that evening, as Vasquez completed her final report on the case, Stella dozed beside her desk, occasionally twitching in her sleep. The department had been buzzing all day with news of their success, with the chief personally stopping by to commend them on their work. The DA says Bennett will face multiple charges. Marshall informed her, dropping into the chair beside her desk. Kidnapping, child endangerment, medical fraud, identity theft, and that's just the beginning. They're still building the case around his manipulation of Vanessa and the other women. And Olivia, Vasquez asked, recovering well. The toxicology report shows he gave Vanessa a prescription sedative to administer, not Benadryl, as she believed. The doctors say there shouldn't be any long-term effects, but they're monitoring her closely. And Vanessa herself, Marshall's expression softened slightly. Back at Lakewood under proper supervision, Sarah is being incredibly understanding, all things considered. Says her sister needs treatment, not punishment. Vasquez nodded, remembering the compassion Sarah had shown, even in the midst of her terror for her daughter's safety. Some bonds, it seemed, could withstand even the most extreme challenges. What about Noah? She glanced at Stella, who had opened her eyes at the sound of the boy's name. He's staying with his mother under supervised visitation while they work through the transition. The psychologist says it will be a long road. Bennett spent years conditioning him to believe his mother had abandoned him, but kids are resilient. With proper support, they have a good chance at rebuilding their relationship. Vasquez scratched Stella behind the ears, earning a contented sigh from her partner. And to think none of this would have happened if you hadn't made a scene in Terminal D, she murmured affectionately. Most embarrassing moment of my career, and also the most important, Marshall said, watching their interaction. I've spent 20 years in law enforcement, and I still don't fully understand how she knew. It wasn't just the baby being too still. Plenty of sedated infants pass through airports for legitimate medical reasons. It was something about the relationship itself. Stella experienced the worst possible violation of the parent-child bond. Vasquez explained, she watched a child die despite her best efforts to protect her. That creates a kind of hypervigilance, an ability to detect even subtle threats to that sacred relationship. Akram, still, Marshall pressed, it's extraordinary. The department psychologist has a theory that dogs who experience trauma develop heightened empathic responses, almost like a form of post-traumatic growth. Instead of being destroyed by what she witnessed, Stella transformed it into a unique perceptual ability. Vasquez considered this as she watched her partner doze. Maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe she just understands that protecting children is the most important work there is, and she's determined not to fail again. Either way, Marshall said, rising to leave, what began as a tragedy has become something remarkable. You should both be proud. After he departed, Vasquez finished her report and prepared to head home. The snow had finally stopped falling outside, leaving the world encased in pristine white that would soon give way to the messy reality of melting and freezing. Much like the cases they handled, the initial shock giving way to the complicated, messy work of healing and justice. Good girl, she whispered as Stella's eyes opened briefly, meeting hers with that familiar, intelligent gaze before drifting closed again. You did good. Outside, the Texas night had settled over the city stars, emerging in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new challenges, but for tonight, they had earned their rest. Because sometimes, Vasquez reflected watching her partner sleep, the deepest wounds create the most remarkable healing, not just for those who are rescued, but for the rescuers themselves. 6 months after the Bennett case, Vasquez sat in a conference room at Quantico, surrounded by FBI behavioral analysts, K-9 training specialists, and child psychologists. On the screen before them played footage of Stella conducting assessments with various adult-child pairs, some legitimate parents with their children. Others, role players instructed to simulate different scenarios of deception or exploitation. What we're seeing here is unprecedented, Dr. Ramirez, the lead researcher, explained, as the group watched Stella consistently differentiate between authentic relationships and simulated ones. Officer Vasquez's K-9 partner demonstrates a pattern recognition ability that extends beyond typical scent detection or behavioral training. She's integrating multiple sensory inputs, micro-expressions, voice stress patterns, physical positioning, scent markers into a holistic assessment that our most sophisticated algorithms still can't match. The implications for child protection are significant. Added Special Agent Wilson, head of the FBI's Crimes Against Children Unit. Traditional screening at borders transportation hubs and high-risk locations relies heavily on trained human observation, which is vulnerable to deception by practiced offenders. A specialized K-9 unit with Stella's capabilities could transform our approach to intervention. Vasquez listened to the discussion with mixed emotions. The professional recognition validated what she had always known about her partner's extraordinary abilities, but the spotlight felt uncomfortable. Their work had never been about accolades or research breakthroughs. It had been about preventing other children from experiencing the fate of that little girl in the apartment 3 years ago. Officer Vasquez, Dr. Ramirez turned to her. We'd like to develop a specialized training program based on Stella's methods with your participation. Of course, the goal would be to identify dogs with similar potential and create protocols to develop these abilities. I'm not sure Stella's abilities can be taught, Vasquez replied carefully. What makes her special came from her experience, not her training. Perhaps, agreed Wilson. But we could identify dogs who have demonstrated protective behaviors toward children, possibly even those who have experienced trauma, and see if they can be guided toward developing similar assessment skills. The discussion continued, plans taking shape for a pilot program that would eventually be called Guardian Echo, a reference to how Stella's unique abilities might be echoed in other, specially selected canines. Throughout it all, Stella remained at Vasquez's feet, seemingly uninterested in the fact that she had become the blueprint for a new approach to protecting vulnerable children. After the meeting, as they walked across the training grounds at Quantico, Vasquez found herself reflecting on how far they had come from that blood-soaked apartment. The trauma that had nearly destroyed Stella had instead transformed her into something extraordinary. A guardian whose wounded heart had somehow developed the ability to see through deception that fooled even trained human observers. You know, she said to Stella, as they paused to watch recruits training with traditional canine units across the field. All these experts think they can understand what makes you special, but I'm not sure they ever will. Sometimes the deepest understanding comes from having been broken open. Stella looked up at her with those amber eyes that seemed to hold wisdom beyond her species, and Vasquez was struck once again by the parallel journeys they had taken. Both had experienced devastating loss. Stella, the family she had failed to protect. Vasquez, the future she had planned with her fiancé. Both had found purpose in that pain, a way to transform grief into protection. Officer Vasquez, a young trainer, approached, clipboard in hand. We're ready for the demonstration with the candidate dogs whenever you and Stella are... Across the training yard, several German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois waited with their handlers, dogs selected for their unusual affinity for children, their protective instincts, their intelligence. Some were rescues, others from working lines, all chosen for qualities that might be shaped into something approaching Stella's remarkable abilities. 2 years after the Bennett case, Vasquez stood at the entrance to the newly established Child Protection K-9 training facility in Northern Virginia. The modern building, set on 30 acres of varied terrain, represented the culmination of research sparked by Stella's unique abilities. A stone plaque near the entrance bore a simple inscription: "For those who turn wounds into wisdom and loss into protection." Inside, 16 handler canine teams were midway through the specialized 6-month training program that had grown from the initial Guardian Echo pilot. The dogs had been selected through a rigorous process that identified specific temperamental and behavioral traits, particularly strong protective instincts toward children, heightened sensitivity to emotional states, and the ability to maintain calm assessment under stress. Dr. Ramirez, now the facilities director, walked beside Vasquez as they observed a training exercise. We've refined the protocol significantly based on what we learned from Stella. She explained, we can't replicate her exact abilities. There's something singular about her particular combination of trauma response and innate temperament. But we've been able to develop specialized training that enhances similar tendencies in these dogs. In the training area, handlers worked with their canine partners through complex scenarios involving actors portraying various relationships, some healthy, others potentially threatening. The dogs were being taught to alert to subtle indicators of deception, manipulation, or exploitation that might not be immediately apparent to human observers. How many teams have graduated so far? Vasquez asked, watching a young Belgian Malinois correctly identify a scenario involving coercive control despite the actor's outwardly pleasant demeanor. 28 teams in the first 2 training cohorts. Ramirez replied with evident pride. They're now deployed at major transportation hubs, border crossings, and family court facilities across 7 states. Early results show a 63% increase in identifying high-risk child welfare situations compared to traditional screening methods alone. Vasquez nodded, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Professional pride, certainly, but also a bittersweet awareness that none of this would exist without the tragedy that had brought Stella into her life, the death of a child who would never benefit from these advances, a family destroyed before these protections could save them. As if sensing these thoughts, Stella pressed gently against her leg, a grounding presence that had steadied her through countless difficult moments. At 5 years old, the shepherd was in her prime, her training and experience making her even more effective than in the early days of their partnership. The white hairs beginning to appear around her muzzle only added to her aura of wisdom. "There's someone who'd like to meet you both," Ramirez said, guiding them toward the administrative offices. "He's been quite insistent." The visitor waiting in the conference room was immediately recognizable. Despite the 2 years that had passed Noah, Bennett had grown taller, his solemn demeanor softened by what appeared to be genuine childhood happiness. At 7, he carried himself with surprising confidence. Though Vasquez noted he still moved with the watchful awareness of a child who had learned early that adults could not always be trusted. "Officer Vasquez," he exclaimed, his face lighting up, "and Stella." The shepherd's reaction was immediate and joyful. A playful bow, followed by a gentle approach that reflected their special bond. Noah knelt to embrace her, whispering something in her ear that made him smile. Rebecca Bennett entered from an adjoining office, looking transformed from the exhausted, cautious woman Vasquez had first met during the case. Her auburn hair was cut in a stylish bob, her professional attire suggesting career success. Her expression relaxed in a way that spoke of healing. "We're in D.C. for a conference on family court reform," she explained after warm greetings were exchanged. "Noah insisted we couldn't be this close without visiting the hero dog who found him. I told everyone at school about Stella," Noah said earnestly, still kneeling beside the shepherd, "about how she knows when kids aren't with the right grown-ups. My teacher didn't believe me until Mom showed her the newspaper stories." "How have you been?" Vasquez asked, noting the easy affection between mother and son that suggested successful rebuilding of their bond. "Good," Noah replied with a straightforward assessment of childhood. "I still see Dr. Julia sometimes, but not every week anymore. And I have a dog now, too. His name is Ranger. He's not a police dog, but he's very smart. We're doing well," Rebecca added with a smile that reached her eyes. "Noah's thriving in school. I've been consulting with the National Center for Protective Parents, helping develop new protocols for evaluating expert testimony in custody cases. And Thomas," she glanced at Noah, clearly measuring her words, "is receiving the treatment he needs." Keetowen. Bennett had ultimately been found not competent to stand trial due to a diagnosis of delusional disorder with narcissistic features. He had been committed to a secure psychiatric facility where he would likely remain for many years, if not indefinitely. "We visit him occasionally," Rebecca continued quietly while Noah was distracted, showing Stella a photo of Ranger on his mother's phone. "It's complicated, but Noah needs to integrate all parts of his story, including his father, to heal fully." "That's remarkably generous," Vasquez observed. Rebecca's expression turned reflective. "It took time to get there. Rage was my first reaction. Rage at what he did to Noah, to me, to those women and children. But sustained anger would only hurt Noah in the long run. The best revenge is living well, raising a son who understands that love doesn't manipulate or control." As they prepared to leave, Noah knelt once more beside Stella, framing her face gently with his small hands. "Thank you for finding me," he said with solemn sincerity. "Dr. Julia says sometimes our worst experiences give us special powers to help others. Your worst day made you special in a good way." The simple wisdom of the child's observation lingered with Vasquez long after the Bennetts had departed. That evening, as she and Stella walked along the Potomac before returning to their hotel, she found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. What had begun with unspeakable tragedy, a murdered child, a traumatized dog, parallel losses that had brought handler and canine together, had transformed into something neither could have achieved alone: a partnership that saved lives, a methodology that protected children, a legacy that would continue long after both had retired from active service. Noah was right, she told Stella as they paused to watch the sunset paint the river in shades of gold and crimson. Our worst experiences did give us special powers, not the kind in comic books, but something more important, the ability to recognize danger that others miss, to understand that sometimes the deepest threats hide behind perfect facades. Stella looked up at her with those wise amber eyes, her expression somehow both ancient and present, as if she understood perfectly the delicate balance between trauma and transformation. Together they continued their walk, Guardian and Echo, moving forward, not despite their wounds, but because of them, two broken beings who had found in each other the perfect complement, whose shared losses had created something extraordinary, a partnership that saw through deception, that recognized authentic bonds, that protected what mattered most. And in that purpose, both had found not just healing, but transformation, becoming something neither could have become alone, their shared journey, creating something new from the broken pieces of what might have been a legacy of protection that would echo far beyond what either could imagine as they walked together in the fading light of day.